Thanks for tuning in to episode 111. This is the Loser Kid Pinball Podcast. I am Josh Roop. I need to remember to announce myself. And my co-captain with me, as always,
Scott Larson.
And Scott, it's funny that you got that message that like I need to. It's funny because I've never thought about introducing myself.
Right.
And it wasn't until recently, till like, I don't know, about 20 episodes ago. I'm like, oh, I probably should say who my name is too.
Right. Well, I just want all the glory. It's fine. It's fine.
That's fine. That's fine. I just assume everyone knows who I am. So it sounds like Foo Fighters are getting lined up to start hitting the line here in July. There's still some Iron Maiden pros. I picked one up, as you can see there in the corner, if you're watching us on YouTube. An amazing game. Scott, where do you get all your games from?
Flipping Out Pinball. And absolutely. And guess what is coming soon? I just got the shipping notice. It's my Godzilla topper.
I was going to say Venom.
So no. So I got the Narwhal topper coming, but I've heard that it looks a lot better in person. So even though I've been a little frustrated with their topper efforts, I am excited to see this one because I am a sucker for light shows and I'm sucker for the immersion experience. So I still I got my Rush topper too. So nice. I got it's 2 for toppers. So I got my Rush topper and I got my Godzilla topper and got it from Zach and Nicole Minnie at Flipping Out Pinball.
Nice. You got to order from Flipping Out. They've got plenty of stock and they're willing to work with you on what your needs are and whatnot. They're great to work with.
Absolutely.
I've never had any issues with them. So let's move on to our guest. Our guest contacted me. I want to say it's been a couple months ago. And at first I didn't know if it was real or not because you get fake emails every once in a while. And they're like, the Prince of Saudi Arabia wants to give you money. And so
wait, that's a fake?
we had someone reach out wanting to discuss pinball because they do the 99% Invisible podcast. We got talking. They left a phone number, and I figure if they're brave enough to leave a phone number, I better call it. So I met Martín Gonzalez, and we started kicking it off and talking a lot. And he was a fan of the L1 episodes we'd done, and he was doing a bit of research for the 99% Invisible podcast. And it sounds like you have a ton of behind-the-scenes extra info that you weren't able to, you had only like 30 minutes to do this episode. And so we wanted you to come on and come hang out with us and talk about this.
Yeah, half that even, because it was half and half. We reran an older episode and then I did some new stuff. And it was about Roger Sharp. And so when I first started working the show, I found this story about Roger Sharp and I was like, oh, this would be an awesome story. This will be so cool. And then I did what I always do when I have a story idea, which is I type in 99PI and then the story thing. So I typed in 99PI pinball and it popped right up. I was like, they did it 10 years ago. Of course. Like it's like one of the oldest running like podcasts from when, people were first starting to get into podcasts. And so what I did is the first half, I used the Roger Sharp movie as an excuse to be like, okay, we'll rerun this old one. And I mix the show every week. So I gave it a fresh mix, put some new music on there, just spruced it up a little. And then second half, I did, I interviewed Keith. I talked about my turn and stuff. But yeah, I only had, I think, like 12 minutes for my segment. So I really had to pack a lot in there. And I knew I wanted to talk to Keith, but I just like couldn't find an email address, I think by design, I'm sure. But I was like emailing whatever Stern generic emails I could find. Mm-hmm. And so then I was like, well, these guys had him on. They'll be able to get me in touch. And you guys put me in touch and, we had this great interview. But, it was like we talked for an hour and I pulled maybe like 5 or 6 clips of him. I was like, there's so much good stuff I can't put in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really appreciated the help. And, I played a little clip of you guys also saying like, oh, he's the GOAT. Like I put a montage of people saying he's the GOAT because I tried to get him to say,
he won't.
He would not. So I was like, all right, I got to pull some other people calling him the GOAT.
we actually have a shirt on our Silver Ball Swag. If you want to get Loser Kid stuff, we actually made a funny shirt that has Keith as a goat, a cartoon goat, wearing this hat that I'm wearing right now, the old school hat. And it's just for fun, but it's hilarious.
Yeah. And then Josh and I ended up just getting on this free ranging conversation because, it's like I used to be a music guy before I was doing podcasts. I was like touring around with bands, like doing sound. I talked about this a lot on the episode, but like I'd use like I think it was called Pin Finder, or like, is that separate from Pinball Map? I don't know. There was this like 10 years ago, there was like a pretty bare bones. I think it was called Pin Finder. And
there was a Pin Map, I know for sure, like Pinball Map too.
Yeah. So I use Pinball Map now, and I can't remember if it's the same app or something different. But I was touring with Blitz and Trapper, this Portland band, when I was living there, and one of the guitar players is super into pinball. It's just like a huge thing in Portland. So we'd go cruise around every city, try and like find one, and you'd be like, oh, Louisville, Kentucky has like a lot of cool machines because they had like all this bootlegging and gambling and stuff. So like, oh, what a great hotspot, so we just cruise around and try and like play. And then started doing podcasts just before the pandemic. I was working on Rick Rubin's show before, Malcolm Gladwell, and I've been working at NIAMPI for like a year and a half. But yeah, before that, like up until then, I was a music guy. So Josh and I were like vibing about music and like just talking about that. Like his touring days too.
Yeah. Which was very short, but it was still fun.
Did you guys do Warped Tour? I forget what you told me. Or was it Warped Tour? Or
we did get to play a couple dates, but it wasn't a full tour. It was but I actually was the dad of the group. So I was on the booking the shows and doing all that stuff, and so it kind of got, I don't know. You can only be a dad for so long because it's like, okay, children, I'm done.
Oh, yeah, that was my job too. Whenever I tour, there were a few times where I would be like, I'm like 27, but this band is 23 or 24, and I'm like wrangling people who are partying or whatever. It just like got so exhausting. But I did a lot of touring with older bands. Like I tour with Calexico a lot, who are all like older guys, and it's like much chiller. Blitz and Trapper, those guys were older, so it was a mixture. But yeah, being a tour dad is like so exhausting. And
well, it's weird because like you said, you did 10 years ago, and that's about when I did it, was about 10 15 years ago, and it's like it almost feels like a different world from back then, especially when you move on with life and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
it's weird. Just
yeah, it's like I used to drive for like 6 hours a day, and now I just like click on Pro Tools all day, which is like fun too, and like I get to research cool stuff and do cool stories. But yeah, and when we were talking about podcast stuff, and like podcasting, I think is a similar place to music, where like you're trying to get the money. There's a lot of money, but it's in weird places, and maybe you can chip off a little piece of it, but like there's like such a divide. So I feel really lucky. Like we're part of Sirius XM, and we're like well funded, and we've been around forever, so there's like it's like stable and nice. But like, oh my god, my old job just laid off like 20% of their workforce. There's like layoffs.
Wow.
And so podcasting is in this really chaotic space, and the stuff I do is like dense research, sound design, whatever. But what I listen to a lot is more like what you guys are doing, where it's just like a couple of people chatting, having a nice time, like, and it's like a lot easier. I think the whole thing is moving more in that direction, because it's like we spend months on a story, and it's resource intensive, and so there's only so many shows that can do that. Like, every story we do goes through like 5 or 6 rounds of edits of everyone on staff weighing in, and there's like 13 or 14 of us, and like it's very elaborate. And this is like, oh, you guys can just call each other up and call someone. Like, I'm jealous of how easy this is.
What's funny is like, so I went to Puerto Rico in January, and we were doing this like food tour, and we got to revolve around through the couples that were there on the tour. We met a gentleman that worked for NPR, and he was actually working for CNN when the towers got hit.
Oh my God.
He remembers doing that. And then he also came to Utah and covered the Emily Smart story, which if you're not familiar with that, go ahead and I guess Google it. It was pretty intense for us in Utah at that time. It was kind of like a shocker. We went from like everyone left their doors unlocked to like this could actually happen because it was in our backyard. It was a child kidnapping. Anywho, but he was talking about he works now for the very first, it's like PBS. It's the channel actually Sesame Street started out on before it went to PBS. But they figured out during the pandemic that this format is a lot cheaper to run. People actually want to watch it, and they were finding out like they're spending all this money on cameras and all this like high definition equipment, and you got us doing this off of our this is my cell phone, and my laptop, and they were realizing, oh, we don't need to be spending all this money on equipment, and still we can get a good product that people are going to watch. And so COVID really shifted the mindset of how production should happen as well.
And to be fair, like the equipment that we have now is crazy good compared to what it was even like 5-10 years ago. Yes, you're right. I'm talking on a newer microphone and a newer computer, but this kind of stuff would be crazy expensive 20 years ago.
Well, I'm here in Stitcher's studios, which are quite nice. It's a real luxury to be able to like record in this like nice booth and sound good. And I engineer recordings for other podcasts, and then also I mix ours, and it's just like sounds incredible in here. But there's room for everything. It's like I listen to a lot of movie. I'm a big movie guy, so I listen to a lot of movie podcasts and stuff. It's like after all day of mixing these like dense, intense stories that are like very rich and like deep, then I'm like, I kind of just want to hear a couple people talk about movies after work, you know? So there's room for everything, but
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and I admire what you guys do. It's so labor intensive. I mean, if you haven't checked out 99% Invisible podcast, it is very well produced. You guys do an awesome job with it. And it hooked me listening to when I called you, because I was like, I don't know if I hadn't even heard of 99%. I'm not going to lie. And so I listened to the most recent episode which was on about like two people saws, those things you like.
Oh yeah,
you don't see it ever anymore. Yeah.
It's like a Looney Tunes thing. Two people.
Yeah, it's a pioneer thing. Yeah, pioneers.
But it was interesting because like listening to this episode, you would have never known that they were getting stolen off the walls of Cracker Barrels, because there's places where they can't use chainsaws, but they can still use these saws to chop down trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so no one was making them anymore. So the best place you could do was steal them from Cracker Barrel. Like, wow.
So. Yeah, that's our whole thing, is we try and find stuff where it's like, hey, there's this thing that you haven't thought about, but there actually is like a whole history behind it. That's why it's 99% visible. So, I've been here for like a year and a half, but I've been listening to this show for like years and years. It's like really influential to me. And so it's cool because then I bring my own perspective, and I really like, old films have these like really cool distinctive sound effects. So I get to like put cool sound effects on it. So like if you listen to this Pinball episode, there's like a lot of cool, I'll go find, I was like, let me find the era of pinball machine that he would have been, that Roger Sharp would have been playing. Let me use that specific one. And then our composer Swan, I sent her these pinball sounds, and she like cut them up, made some samples, and she gave it kind of like a little T-Rex Jeepster kind of like fun little garagey groove, and then like use the pinball sounds as like synth and percussion on it. Yeah. And like, it's just so fun. We have like so much fun doing it.
It's so cool.
But yeah, so when I saw this Roger Sharp movie was coming out, I was like, oh, this is a perfect excuse to like get super nerdy. And like, I've always been super into pinball, but then this kind of like uncorked a different level, of like going and playing a lot and like talking to people. But I'm still like such a novice, and I don't really keep up on stuff that much. It's really just like, I listen to you guys. I listen to Silverball Chronicles, which is like more history stuff, but like, I don't know. I don't like go on Pinside and on these long threads or something. It's like, I don't really keep too much up on it.
I hop on.
I'm gonna get you guys.
But
yeah, true.
I'm gonna get you guys in trouble. There's gonna be a thread about how rude this all is. But
bring it on.
Yeah, it's like I'll kind of find out that something's coming because it like shows up on location.
Yeah.
And,
no, I get you.
But yeah, so I got to get deep in stuff, and then I hadn't even like heard of Keith until like a few months ago, because I was just researching like who designers were and everything, and I heard him on your guys' podcast, and he was talking about that like pop bumper on the right, and like being in control versus being out of control. I was like, oh, I just like love this. Like I gotta talk to this guy about this. And when we're doing edits, everyone just like was like, we love this guy. He rolls. I was like, yeah, he's awesome. And he actually really helped me figure some, like, just like talking to him, he talked about how there's two kinds of players, like people who like to just shoot around, have a nice time, check out all the objectives, and people who are like points. And I was like, oh, that's why I like am not that great in tournaments and stuff, because I just want to like vibe and shoot. Like I don't want to like figure out how to get the highest score possible. It's like not really how I'm set up. I don't know. How do you guys fit into that? like category.
Okay, I'm like you, where I like just kind of wandering through the game. Okay, hey, I'll start this mode, or I'm doing this thing, and I couldn't care less about points. I mean, it's kind of fun when you enter in your initials, but for the most part, I just like exploring the game.
Yeah.
But you know, it's hard to do that in a tournament setting. But I don't know, Josh. I don't even know how you approach games.
Depends on the day. I love both ways. I do love to explore a game and see all the little nooks and crannies, like on Indiana Jones, where you're going through the mine cart video mode. If you go a certain route, it will actually pop you out to the WB frog, and he does a little song and dance for you. It's cool to find little Easter eggs like that. I love exploring the games, but there's just something about blowing up a game and just being like, yeah, I dropped $5 billion on Godzilla this weekend.
Well, yeah, you got. I
really
see one in
enjoy
your
as well.
background. You can do that. I think. I don't know. I have to look at my insider, but I think my best score is like 500 million or something like that. It's like I haven't hit $1 billion. Or like you have an Infinity Quest back there too. I don't think I've gotten more than one gem in a game ever, and I've played it dozens of times.
It's actually still that game is surprisingly challenging. It still is fun, but to actually complete the modes, you know, there's 2 easies, 2 middle, and 1 hard. And so a lot of times I end up getting about 85% through, and then I drain. That's just how I roll on that game.
But it's super fun. It's so deep. Like, but you know, I can only ever play these games on location. Like, I live in Brooklyn. I live in an apartment. Like, I can't I can't get a home game, and so you know, I have to like go play them, and you only get so much time, and you only have so many dollars. You know, it sort of add up. So. You know,
unless if you're Kate Martin, you know, who works at Buttermilk Bar there in Brooklyn and can play the pinball machines when there's some downtime.
Yeah, I really love Buttermilk. There's like a whole area around there, the whole like south part of Park Slope, where you can just bar hop around and go try stuff. And like, you know, I go up to Williamsburg a lot too, but I don't know how prices are in other places, but it's pretty solidly $1 a game in like a lot of parts of New York, which is a little annoying. But like, you know, down in South Slope, it's more typically, you know, you get 3 for 2 or 4 for 3 or something.
Yeah.
So I go practice down where it's like a little cheaper. You're like, oh, I can get a lot more bang for my buck down practicing over here. But yeah, no, New York is like weirdly kind of tough in a lot of ways, especially now. I've noticed it's like whatever the last 3 or 4 Stern games are is like what's everywhere, and which makes sense. But the older games are kind of like falling off, you know. And there's one Lord of the Rings, and it's like just beat to hell, like it barely plays, you know.
Okay, well, it's over 20 years old.
Totally, yeah. It's like if I was an operator, I would be like, all right, let's get some Foo Fighters in here or something, you know. But yeah, I definitely miss like playing some of that older stuff. That's like kind of what I came up on. And there's this really great place in, you know, I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and my parents still live there. And there's a great pinball museum there that I absolutely love called Electromagnetic. And I go there all the time. So I was just there a week or two ago. And I just have like a soft spot for some of these older ones that they have. Like, you know, they have Whodunit. Do you guys like Whodunit?
Yes.
I love Whodunit, but you never there was a place in
you don't see it anymore.
There was a place in Portland across the street from a bar I worked at, and I would just go play Whodunit all the time. And like, you know, I want to see them take some of these old games and do remakes like they did with Beatles, you know. My dream is if they do like a Columbo reskin of Whodunit. That's like my dream table.
Yes.
And you know, the ball save could be like just one more thing. So like whoever owns the IP, if you're listening, make my dreams come true. Yeah, you know.
Well, and there's something about those older games too. Someone pointed out to me, especially with the 90s games, they were attempting, instead of like shoot the ramp and shoot the captive ball, it was like, especially with Whodunit,
the elevator.
You know, go for the elevator. And like it was all places. The places had names in the game, and it created more atmosphere to that game and more of that world under glass that we don't see much anymore. But it does become a little confusing. It's easier when you're going from game to game to game, and it's like shoot the ramps. Oh, I know what the ramps are. you know, it's a little hard sometimes. You're like, what's the elevator? But at least in that game, it's like smack dab right in the middle. It's like, well, I think I know what the elevator
I think
is.
I can figure that out.
And like, you know, they also have a lot of like, you know, they go all the way back to like, you know, 40s or 50s. They have like cool older stuff. But the last time I was there, I got really into some like Gottlieb. I don't know the difference between the system 80s, but like and there's like A's and B's and whatever. I'm not that deep on it. You know, even I listen to Silverball Chronicles, but a lot of it went over my head. But like, they have this block that has Mars, God of War, Volcano, and Black Hole, all three together. And I like spent a long time on those, and it's like, these are so fun, and they're not you know, the theme is just like a fun, like it doesn't have to be like IP. It's just like, I don't know, space. Like I love those ones.
I will say we have talked about this on the show before, though, is that is really cool for the 70s, 80s, and maybe even the 90s. It's almost a killer for a game to not have some sort of recognizable theme now. Like, you can get away with it, but it's a lot harder than, you know, than the 70s through 90s, which you would get just casual people going through and playing arcades. But you almost need to have a reason to get up from your bar stool and go over to play it. If you see Godzilla, then you're like, oh, okay, I know what Godzilla is. If you're like giant radioactive lizard, you're probably not going to go over to it.
Yeah.
Well, but it's also like, look at like one of the highest selling pinball machines of all time was Spirit of 76. And it was
but that's a completely different era, though.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is like, you could get away with that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Even like Roger Sharp said, like, it's kind of funny that we say that like Adam's Family is the greatest selling pinball machine of all time. And he's like, no, it's like the greatest modern DMD, because some of those EMs were like selling
50,000.
Ridiculous numbers. They said that Spirit of 77 probably is the highest group. I can't remember how many that one has. I bet Pinside has something on it.
It was a crazy amount. But I mean, getting back to what you were saying, though, is a lot of locations, they tend toward having the newer games. That's actually how it always used to be, because games used to be beat to shreds. And so you'd put them on location and they would just run the wheels off, and then they would sell it off to buy a new one because everything was so grooved or just worn down. And so, and even modern games have that similar vibe where, you know, someone can route it and then say, okay, well, it's time to move on and get a newer version, so I don't have as much.
Oh man, yeah. There's already there's a lot fewer Avengers than there were like a few. They all got replaced with Bonds and Foo Fighters because they're probably just all beat up. And like, I have a real soft spot for Batman 66, and there's like not a single one in New York, and it's, you know, what, 6 years old or something. Like, it's not very old, but it's just like these things get cycled out so fast.
Oh yeah. Well, and Batman 66 is kind of a higher price machine as well. I think.
Well, it was.
Yeah. Well, it was. Yeah.
It was like,
5 years
this
ago.
Crazy $700 more than what the standard ones are. But I mean, that was still when games were, you know, a premium game was like $6,200 or something.
Yeah.
So they're like $7,000 for a game. Now it's like, okay, you want a premium game? It's $9,500.
Yeah, I have a soft spot because I used to play. Again, a lot of this is just based around like what was across the street from where I worked or went to college, you know. So they had a Dark Knight near another place I worked in Portland, and that's like I've logged so many hours on that. And when I was just in Providence, there's a place that has like a completely everything new Dark Knight. It was like the best Dark Knight I've played in like 10 years, and I was like, yes, because you know, those things are all like anytime I've seen one in the wild, it's like barely functioning.
They're shredded.
So this is totally rebuilt. And like, I was like, oh, I'm in heaven right now. So, you know, but yeah, there's a lot of games I would love to play, but there's not a single one, you know, like the closest Doctor Who is in like Asbury Park, you know, and I love Doctor Who and Jackbot. Like, you know, you can't find them anywhere. So it's like, that's my hope is some of these, you know, you start to see them coming back a little bit. There's like, there's a Future Spa somewhere. There's weirdly like lots of.
I actually have one of those in my town. It's a very interesting game.
It's a vibe, man. There's like weirdly a lot of Getaway High Speed 2. I've like really been playing.
Yes, they made tons of those.
They're everywhere, which is rad.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, it's for some reason maybe it's just like easy upkeep, but I play that one a lot.
Okay, by the way, that's the same designer who did Star Wars. We were talking about that earlier, maybe offline.
Oh yeah.
And you were wondering who designed the Stern Star Wars. It's the same guy who did High Speed 2.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I don't really know the distinctions of designers, but every once in a while I go like, oh yeah, Jackbot has the same kind of the mechanism as the Time Expander. Oh, of course, it's like the same guy. Like, I'm like just starting to learn about all that stuff. But like, you guys are so much deep. I was excited to come on and talk about some of the stuff because I'm like, oh, you can like explain this to me. I don't know hardly anything, but yeah, it is weird. It's like there's what is or isn't there. Like there's a lot of monster bashes around, which is kind of rad, especially the remake is around. But like I think we were talking earlier about how like people are hoarding their Medieval Madness, and there's like one or two in New York, and they kind of like they're originals and they just need a lot of upkeep. So it's really like catch can. There's a kind of abundant Attack from Mars, but weirdly like Medieval Madness, it's a little stingy. So yeah, no, it's a little weird in New York. I kind of like use Pinball Map and keep an eye out while I'm traveling. And I'm a real annoying and vigilant Pinball Map person because I'm like going to seek out machines. It's like, oh, I'll go to Queens just because they have like a better Tales of Arabian Nights than the one at Buttermilk. No offense, sorry. Like, like
love you, kid.
Yeah, like they have like a pristine one up in Queens, but then if I go all the way there and it's like broken, I'm so annoyed. So I'm like vigilant about on Pinball Map, like commenting on. I'm so pedantic about it because like I don't know, that's happened to me where I've been like I'm going to travel for a game and it barely works. So I'm pretty active on there, and I spend a lot of time just cruising around. Like I'm doing some traveling this fall, and I was like scoping out. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be in Portland. Like, who has a Lord of the Rings in good condition or something I can go play because we'll starving for it.
I kind of miss those days. I remember those days when I first got into pinball, and it was like you'd find out about what it was new to you, right? And you'd be like, "Oh, this is amazing!" And so you had to do travel, and you finally get there, and then it was just garbage.
Yeah,
it just wasn't
so
It's so fun learning those games, and I think that's why we get so excited by new games, is because we want that same sensation when we first got in the hobby of enjoying the whodunits and the Congos and games like that.
Yeah, it's tough if you can only ever play on location. Like I just played Godfather for the first time, and I played for 20 or 30 minutes. I was like, I'm not entirely certain what's going on here yet. Like when they're that deep, it's that trade-off we were talking about like what works at home versus what works on location. And so those older games are fun because you can kind of get the hang of it pretty quickly. You play Attack from Mars for a little bit, you know what you're doing. You're trying to go for it.
Well, they also had the lights on the playfield that pretty much, like if you hit that shot, it moved up one light. And so you had a visual representation of how far are you in the game. I mean, modern games they have a similar thing, but it's just not as in your face.
And actually, this is something I talked to Keith about because we're like theoretically a design podcast, or like that's our focus. And so I was asking him a lot of questions about design, and I was like, yeah, man, these screens, like a lot of times, I think there's a few like these Jersey Jacks or, where you kind of are struggling to figure out how, like what you're supposed to be doing in that moment. And so he was like, yeah, we're trying to balance lights and screen because the lights and the call outs really are like, you don't have to take your eyes off the play field, but it's kind of like, no offense to like Tesla owners, but I tried out a Tesla and it was like, everything's on this screen and you have to look.
It's a different way.
And I spent years like driving a tour van where it's like, oh, I can reach over and adjust the air and the music and whatever without looking. So it's that kind of like divided attention thing. So I think that's why I've been vibing on these older games lately, because they just like had to communicate with lights and sound. They couldn't lean as heavily on the screen. And then, now in the modern era, you can just put wherever on there and you playing clips and stuff. And so sometimes you're playing Bond or something. You're like, do I need to watch this clip or do I need to like focus on the game? Like,
always focus.
I had that with Halloween. Have you guys played Halloween?
Yes.
Where like
That's what I was just thinking too.
You're like, oh, I'm looking at this cool Michael Myers, and then it like drops the ball while you're not looking. You're like,
drains you. Yeah.
There's just a little light. It just like flashes really discreetly. You're like, ah.
That's what I was thinking too, because when I was playing Halloween and it's like you're watching the scene, all of a sudden it's like, why is my
you drained
racking up?
Yeah. What? You can't do that to me.
Yeah. Halloween messes with my brain because it spontaneous. You know, the ball just apparates.
Yeah.
You know, it just appears right above the flipper, and if you're not paying attention, you're smoked.
Oh, it's so fun though. But yeah, you gotta stay on it. But I really like the way that they do the locks is so cool, and the upper play. Like I really like it. But it kind of, I think it pretty much disappeared from New York. But there's the is it Ultraman, the kind of the kaiju reskin. I go play that.
The version of it.
That one's super fun too. So I go play that sometimes. But yeah, it's just really like catch as catch can. You know, whatever I can find. And so it's so different from like when I was living in Portland, where you're like, oh, every bar has pinball. I kind of miss that aspect of it, but there's a few good spots. Like I went to Sunshine Laundry, which just reopened, but it seems like they're having like some kind of legal permitting issues, so they can only have, I think, like 4 or 5 machines.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer because you're like, well, of course, if you can only pick 4 or 5, you're going to pick these newer Sterns that earn, but you know, I know they have a deep collection that's not out, and I'm like, pull out some of these older games, please.
Yeah, we were actually talking to Greg Pavarelli about that at Sunshine Laundromat, and just kind of the issues they've been going through with that. But it sounds like they're open for good now. It seemed they were getting shut down almost every other month there for a second.
New York, man. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
but yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I told you guys this story. Speaking of stuff that we had to cut out from the episode, we had this whole subplot. Speaking of living in Portland, about these mob wars in Portland, and it was like so interesting. And it just was like too many ideas. You know, I had this short segment, and so it was like something's got to go. And so I wanted to tell you guys, you know, Mayor LaGuardia in New York was like, oh, there's all this like mob pinball stuff. And it's easy to kind of go like, oh yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of an overreaction, a little melodramatic. But then you hear about some of these stories and you're like, oh, the mob was really like pinball was a mob thing. And Portland has this history because it was, you know, port town of like gambling, prostitution, like a lot of like vice. It's like a big vice city always. And so I'm guessing that's why pinball has just kind of always been around. But you know, this story I want to tell you guys is from the 50s, and you know, it was theoretically illegal in Portland too back then. Just like a lot of cities had bans. Chicago, like the epicenter of pinball today, like it was illegal there too. So it kind of like went underground and became like fully criminal. And there are a couple competing mob bosses, Stan Terry and this guy Big Jim Elkins, which I'm a sucker for. Like, you know, that's like a great mob name. But so they got into this turf war, and they would like do raids and like steal each other's machines or steal the money out of them or sabotage them. You know, it was like a real like mob style. So then in 1955, Big Jim roped in the Teamsters, who like, you know, I'm extremely pro-union, but there was this era where the Teamsters were basically like a mob
enforcers.
Yeah, exactly.
They were enforcers, yeah.
And so they came up with this scheme, and they made a phony union called Coin Machine Men of Oregon. And so they had a few different tactics, but one of them was, you know, they would do a picket around the bars that Stan Terry had. And, you know, people would be like, oh, I'm not going to cross the picket line. So it was just like a lot of kind of shenanigans. And so finally, Terry called in some connections via Las Vegas, and they put some pressure on the Seattle Teamsters, who were coordinating with the Portland ones. And so then the Teamsters kind of like pulled their support from the Coin Machine Men, and were turning these pickets and boycotts back around on Big Jim and like squeezed him out. You know, it's just like kind of like this little tug of war. And so Big Jim came up with this plan. He was like, oh, I got to try and get my machines back or get back in the game. So he hired this guy named Herman Bugsy Burns, which when's the last time you met a Bugsy? You know, like another great mob name. So Bugsy and his gang posed as pinball repairmen, or this was the plan. They were going to pretend to be pinball repairmen, and they would go to the bars with Stan Terry's machines and go, yeah, we're going to swap these out for some new ones. We're going to load these up to make some room. And the truck's coming in an hour with like the new machines, which in the 50s, like you could probably get away with that. You know,
probably get away with that. A bait and switch,
exactly. There's no tax.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Let me know.
So they had this whole plan in place, and, you know, Big Jim was kind of like waiting for the right time to strike. And, you know, Bugsy was like, oh, you know, I got to do some crimes. I'm a crime guy. And so while they were waiting for the plan to take effect, they went and robbed a Safeway, which is like a grocery store. I don't know if you guys have them or if it's regional, but yeah. So they went and robbed a Safeway and got busted.
As they would, right? Just hanging out. What are you doing? Let's go rob a Safeway.
Yeah.
Safeway.
Yeah, we got to do some crimes. We're crime guys. And so Big, you know, that was kind of the end of Big Jim's scheme. And so, you know, this all took place over like a year or two. And so he actually wiretapped the Teamsters, and he turned the recordings over to the FBI and the local newspaper. And it had, you know, this whole like racketeering union thing. So he was able to like get off. And it was a big deal. There was like a couple years of like Senate hearings about Portland mob. And then, you know, there was a big election where they were like, we're going to clean up the mob. And it just kind of like these pinball wars like had all these repercussions. So you're like, oh, this actually was like really central to the story of the mob in the Northwest. And so then it makes like Mayor LaGuardia seem a little less of like insane. You're like, oh, that was like a reasonable political position. Like that was a way to like take a stand against the mob. But yeah, so anyway, we just there's this whole story beat. I'm so glad I got to tell it somewhere because it was super interesting. And if you want to read more about it, you can Google like, you know, Big Jim Elkins. But I got a lot of this. Finn J.D. John wrote this article that I pulled a lot of this stuff from. So you guys can, go Google if you want to learn more about the Portland Mob Wars. But
so they weren't actually using the pinball machines for gambling. They were using it as like money laundering. Essentially, they were using it for
you got it.
Not necessarily money laundering, but it was, you know, you're robbing a bank essentially at that point because you've got so many quarters going into
That's it. No, absolutely for money laundering, and also just straight up like, you know, we've got bars, we've got pinball machines. You know, it's a way to just make money.
It's the Willie Sutton model. Like, why do you break into pinball machines? Because that's where the money
exactly.
is.
And you know, like at that point they had flippers and everything. You know, like we were saying, it wasn't just pure gambling, but I'm sure at first it was like, oh yeah, here's like that earlier more gambling style. But you know,
okay. By the way, that whole story sounds like an episode from Grand Theft Auto.
Yes,
it totally does. I've never played the game, and I'm like, yeah, you're the mob guy, and you need to go play with the pinball
go
machines.
raid the machines, you know.
Go raid the machines. See, okay, here's your quest. Go steal the machines. Tell them that the next one's showing up.
The side quest for bonus points is you rob the Safeway, but if you get caught, you lose.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And then, that's the other reason I like going to like pinball museums and stuff, because they have these older games and you can go play them and you can go, man, all that fuss about this, you know. So I don't know, it's so fun. And this one that I like going to in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, Electromagnetic, they have a lot of like doubles and triples, and like, have you guys ever seen I Think You Should Leave? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's a great Netflix show, and Bob Odenkirk in one sketch plays his character where he's talking about having doubles and triples of all his classic cars that he doesn't own, but he's like, yeah, you know, doubles is good because then you can put one in your garage and drive the other, but like triples is best. And this is total like triples is best. Like there's some of these 60s and 70s machines, they have like 2 or 3. They have like a Star Trek that's like signed by the whole cast, you know, and then one that's more of a players, or, you know, like they have such cool stuffs, and they're expanding too. So you can go play the entire history of pinball all the way up to, you know, they have Avengers and stuff like that. That's newer Sterns. They have some like custom ones. Someone took one of those the Pinball 2000. I think it was like the Revenge from Mars. Is that the Pinball 2001? And they,
Revenge.
Yeah, they have like a custom. They made a whitewood and custom programming and stuff. I think it was like a Frozen theme, maybe, or something. It's just super cool.
Okay. I've actually played I played a homebrew version of Frozen.
This
so
might
that
be
was interesting.
Same person, actually. Yeah, or was it like on a Pinball 2000 machine?
Yeah, it was very
this
similar.
Has got to be the same one.
I think he made it for his daughter or something, like, because I did talk to the designer. I can't remember. It was at Chicago.
I guarantee you this is the same one, because how many people made their own?
Yeah, and it's so a total one-off.
Yeah, I kind of love that. Or like, I was watching videos of Keith's like Archer machine when I was researching. I was like, oh, this is just like it's way beyond my mechanical competence to like do something like this. So I just like love it and admire it. It's like, so cool.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other wild stories you ran into while you were doing the podcast, or pretty much? I gotta admit, I liked at the end of the podcast you guys redoing the Attack from Mars.
Yeah, that was like seriously for nerds. So if you go on Internet Archive, you can download. Someone posted like a ROM dump of all the sounds, and what we do is like at the end of the episodes, not every single one, but by and large, we give a little shout out that we're a Stitcher and Sirius XM production, and Roman the host would just like riff something into the mic or whatever. And then when I joined up, like, I love crazy sound design and stuff, and I started getting really into like making the craziest tags at the end possible. And it would be like this 15-second joke that I would do with like sound design. And even my very first episode was about an airport in Ireland, and I like, brought the episode in for a landing. It was like my first week. I just did a little sound design thing of like, oh, this is your captain speaking, and I'd like airplane sounds, and like I put myself over like a fake speaker, and everyone's like, oh, this guy's nuts, like he'll do anything. So I went on Internet Archive and downloaded the ROM of all the Attack from Mars sounds, and there's like 500 or something. And I was like clicking through trying to find all the juiciest ones, and like, and so then we did, instead of flying saucers from Mars, flying saucers from Stitcher or whatever. And so it's just like all these, I sent Roman a clip of Attack from Mars. I was like, try and do this delivery. And I put in like the music, actually, I got to hear the raw music. I was like, oh, this sounds like amazing, actually. Like it's super lo-fi coming through the speakers, but I was like, this stuff sounds great. Like everything sounded awesome. So yeah, we did that fun little clip. And yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of cool Keith stuff. I'm sorry, Keith, like, you gave me an hour of your time, and I only like could pull a couple things, but it was so deep. And one thing I talked to him a lot that I enjoyed was about collaboration, and that really resonated with me, because we make our show in a very, very collaborative way. It's like one of the most collaborative things I've ever been a part of. One person will write a script, and they've got an editor, and the editor will help them shape it up. And then we do a thing where Roman and the producer will read each of their parts, like a live read, and they'll play back clips and stuff, and everyone will give comments and weigh in, and then they'll go away and record their two parts separately, and the producer will cut it in Pro Tools and edit it, put music on there and everything. And then we'll do another round where we all listen to notes, and then they'll incorporate those notes, and we'll do another round of notes. And then they pass the episode to me, and I mix it and add sound design and stuff. We'll do another round of notes. So it's like every episode we do gets touched by, if there's like 13 or 14 of us, at least 2/3 of the staff touch every single episode at some point. Super collaborative. So I was asking Keith about that. I was like, how do you collaborate? And he just gave like such deep shout outs to his whole team, and kind of talked about the relationship of like, I'm designing these shots, and I go to my engineer, and he's like, yeah, I can't do that. Like, or yeah, this thing isn't going to work. And so then, he does that. And then when he's working with the programmers, I talked a little about this in the episode, that they can go back and tweak the code and be like, oh, let me change the objectives once I see how people play it. And I just like love talking to him about all this collaboration, because there's no way one person can be the master of like play dynamics and design and mechanical engineering and software engineering and sound and video. It's like it takes a village to make the machine. And so, even though he gets credit as like the auteur, he was like, no, I wouldn't be anywhere without my team. And I really love that vibe. Like, I really love Barry and like Bill Hader, and he's like, oh yeah, I got this cool shot because of my like assistant director suggested it, or like, oh, this camera operator did a really great zoom. So like, he like refuses to take credit for the whole thing. He's like, no, it's like the sum of all the parts. So I felt bad. I was like, I really want to include this. There's just like too many things. He sent me a cool clip. Also, there's like a crazy machine testing room where they stress test all the parts, you know, like, you know, just solenoids firing and stuff. It's like, can you give me like a little 10-second recording of that? And it just sounded crazy. It sounded like the craziest factory ever. And like, I didn't have time for that either, but I was just like, oh, this is so cool.
Well, when we got to tour JJP, it was cool because Godfather hadn't been revealed yet, but they were testing it back in the corner, and we were all like, so can we go back? And they're like, no.
Yeah, just that monster.
Like, what happened if the wind just breathed through and knocked off that blanket? And we got no.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's full circle. It's a real mob game. I don't know. I'm looking forward to trying it some more, but you know, when you're doing all these like quests and stuff, I was like, oh, I kind of just want to like shoot a little pinball. But that was another funny part in episode 2 is like, I was like, all right, I'm talking to Keith. I gotta enter my first tournament. And I've just been chicken because like I was saying, I'm not like a points player. And I see some people playing and they're intense and like throwing the machine around or whatever. It's like, so I got kind of dragged to one, and I had a lot of fun voice memoing my way through, like getting my butt kicked. And I just was like, that's something I just love, is if I can like mildly embarrass myself on air, I'm always willing to, you know. I did a story where I took an adult, this is like years ago, but I took an adult swim lesson, and I had a producer point a mic at me in the pool being like, oh, like I'm scared. So it's like I just like love mildly embarrassing myself on the mic, and that was like pretty fun. It's like, yeah, I just got shredded.
Okay, I will say, just so you know, for people who are more like you and me, Martin, where we actually do the play for fun, you can go to Pin Tips. So it's actually a website that you can actually pull up, and it does have like, hey, here are the top 2 things or top 3 things that you need to do in this game. And so that does help for people who are on the fly and just like I just want to have a good time, but it'd be nice to have a good score too.
Well, and the other part too is like when I first got into tournaments, Bo and Karen's came to Utah because we had our it was Salt Lake Gaming Con, and it was a huge tournament, and he just happened to be in Utah at the time because of his main job.
His main job, yeah.
Yeah, his main job. And so, you know, it was intimidating having someone that was a top 5, top 10 player in the world, and you're playing against them. But the cool part is, you know, he could tell I was intimidated, and he's like, well, which games haven't you played? And I was like, I've never played Starship Troopers at that point. And he's like, okay, we'll just do these 2 things and just don't stress about anything else. Just keep the ball alive and do these 2 things. And so I've noticed, though, at tournaments, a lot of people are very willing to help.
Yeah,
and so you just have to ask, because I know that some people get offended. Like if you're talking to someone like, hey, you do this and this. Like, I've played this game before.
Most people, it is a social thing for them. Yeah. And really, a lot of these local tournaments, I mean, come on, if you win $40. It's really so minimal that it's not
diminish my 3rd place win that I just got.
Yeah, I'm not diminishing it. I'm just saying. I'm just not saying don't open your 401k with it. Yeah,
I was very proud of it.
Right. But what I'm saying is that for them, I mean, the whole point of these is that, hey, we want to hang out with people.
Yeah,
you know, just people, and we've said it before. The beautiful thing about pinball is how it's something that, regardless of your political affiliation, your religious affiliation, your social affiliation, your gender affiliation, just insert whatever thing here. It doesn't matter. You can still play a game together.
Yeah.
And coming together, because I think that's one thing that's really helped pinball thrive in the last 5 years, is because we've lost that ability to connect with people.
Yeah, that's really the main reason even if I get my butt kicked, I'm going to like hang out. But then, you know, I can still kind of play dumb a little bit, you know, I don't know how much longer I can rock that, but of just being like, oh, I'm like new to tournaments or whatever. And, you know, I made friends with in the episode, I played Two Voice Memos of me getting my butt kicked by this guy Hunter, who then I ended up just like making friends with him because I sent him a link and was like, hey, you know, I talked about you kicking my butt on the show. And then we were playing each other in Foo Fighters, and I was like, man, I'll level with you. I've played this like 3 times. I don't understand it. And he showed me something with like the drop targets where you like get the power up things. I still haven't totally gotten the hang of it, but I just like hit a really nice wave, and then I think I knocked him out. Actually, I can't remember if I knocked him out or if I just beat him, but I kind of like, he showed me a couple of things just like to be a nice guy, and then I just like accidentally racked up a huge score, and he's like, God damn it. So yeah, he should have waited until after to show me, but people are pretty generous with the knowledge.
Okay, but it's fun though. Like I think that he probably laughed about that.
Yeah, we had a good,
that's what I'm guessing. He's like, I can't believe that I told you how to do it, and then you just went farther in the game.
I was a little embarrassed. Yeah, I was like, oh, that was unusual. That was like very lucky.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I'm pretty good at Creature, actually. I really love Creature. Yes. It's just like, it vibes with me.
That was a great
game. And so,
yes.
I beat someone. I was like, hey, actually, I'm like pretty good at Creature. Like, let me show you my tactic, and which is like, just try and hit that move your car as soon as you can and collect the film along the way. But like, you can, they were trying to get FILM, and I'm like, you can get a decent bonus from that. But if you just go for move your car, and if you can really practice nailing that every time, then you like that more than makes up for the point difference. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. I have a great strategy for Creature. I can hang with that. Now I need to learn the strategy for like 80 more games, you know. I'm like, and there's a new, I'm like, okay, now I gotta learn the Foo Fighters, now I gotta learn the Bond one. So that's the one thing where I'm like, oh, this is a lot of work if you want to like stay sharp. And so like,
yes.
Well, and it's harder too, because like when I first got into it 10 years ago, the biggest strategies were for the 90s Williams games. It was like making sure you just shoot left orbit on Theater of Magic over and over and over until it tells you to shoot, I think it's still the left orbit. So it's like, and you'll blow up your score that way. Or Johnny Mnemonic, it was light spinner and spin
I love
spinner.
Johnny.
You know,
they have one of those here, and I just like, I love Johnny Mnemonic. It's super underrated.
Now it's like, now Godzilla, it's like, well, I could go for damage.
There are 5
bonus.
Different ways you can do it. Well, okay, but that speaks to how well balanced modern games. Modern games have really taken, especially Stern, have taken that tournament friendly vibe where they don't want the one path to a big score. They want to say, look, you can go this way, you can go that way, you can create your own, and you can still build a score, have it be fun, but not always have to take the same path.
Yeah. And another really interesting thing that Keith talked about is he was like, you know, we'll put some multi-balls close to the start, so they're pretty easy to get. Like, you know, you start off
the gimme. The gimmies.
Yep. Avengers, you gotta it's pretty, you can start that Thor by accident if you're not careful, you know, like, so if
I usually do.
If someone's, you know, you want to try and save that and, you know, for when you're in a gem quest, but also if like someone doesn't know anything about that or is just there to like flip and have a good time, they have a pretty high likelihood of accidentally starting Thor if they're just flipping around. They're like, oh my God, multi-ball. And like that stuff is like really fun. You want to make it accessible. And I feel like when I go to bars, I'll see people hop on Godzilla and just having a blast, you know, like people really have fun with that game. And that's really what it's about. It's like, what's fun and enjoyable. And then other stuff, you know, you can be ahead and you can be like, oh yeah, I really like this like one specific thing, but like, you know, then you can't bring your friends, you know, like, I try and bring my friends who like are much more, I mean, I'm a medium, but I try and bring my like super casual friends. And then I'm just now starting to make friends in New York who are like hardcore. And I'm like, oh, you guys are on a different plane. I don't know if I'll ever get there.
Oh, they're totally on a different level.
I can't get that. I just respect and admire and hang out and try and like learn a little, but like, you know, I got other hobbies too. It's not just football. So like some people, that's their life.
If you ever want to melt your brain on tournament talk, just talk to Travis Murray.
Yeah.
Holy crap. He's a top 10 player of the world.
Well, no, he's 24. I just pulled it up.
Sorry.
And
I apologize. My apologies.
Yeah.
The other 23 that I just shortchanged.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll put it this way. So 21, 22, 23, 24. Let's see if you've heard these names. Josh Sharp.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Keith Elwin.
Okay.
Eric Stone.
Okay. Don't know.
Travis Murray. So that's really good company. And then just 2 above him is Colin McAlpine. And these guys are crazy good.
Yes. Here's my rank. I'm number 16,813.
Yeah.
I'm 260th in New York out of, let me just see here. We got 513. So I'm like right in the middle in New York, not too bad, but it's like, it's fun.
Well, okay. So let me point that out though. That shows that there is a very tight demographic that is bundled in the middle of saying, hey, we're really okay. Maybe at the beginning, I guess, however you want to say it. But like once you get beyond like the top 500, top 1,000, then it really goes into very casual. So it shows how much reach even casual players can have in pinball. And you're the perfect example where you don't have machines. Like you have to travel to them, and you are, I guess, the beauty and the curse of what you're doing is that you don't have to worry about investing in a game, but you're also beholden to whatever they have.
It's that's why I'm on these hunts. It's like if I had space, I would totally get, like a Doctor Who or something, like, and every once in a while I'll hop on the marketplace and just be like on Pinside, like that's the only reason I go to that is just go, how much would that run me? And you're like, even if I had an extra $5,000, where would I put this thing?
Come on, you can put it. You can put an apartment. Come on.
My neighbor would not be stoked. He already has to hear me like playing music all the time, like, and looping the same part of a podcast over and over. I don't want to put him through anything else.
You can put headphones on him. Actually, that's your key. Get a modern game. Get a headphone jack.
Oh yeah. Well, even just like the mechanics. It's like I can hear my my next door neighbor like walking. I can hear their floorboards creaking. Like that's the New York life. Like it's real thin walls. Nice. So but you just have to kind of pretend like in like sometimes you'll hear someone. I'll hear my downstairs neighbor have a loud conversation where he's all hyped up, and I just have to like, you're like, but he can't hear me, right? Like you just have to like,
right? Yeah, no.
Suspension of disbelief.
I'm in the bubble. Yeah.
So that's why I like coming to this studio. It's like, I come in here once or twice a week, and you're just like, all right, I can crank the speakers up and I can mix, and I know I'm not bothering anyone. Or if I'm talking, like it's just going to be totally isolated. So I would love to get my own studio, and I would love to get my own pinball room. And so who knows? Maybe if I like get married and have kids or something, I'll go back to Rhode Island and go, like, that's what one of my coworkers did. He just moved back to here. He moved to Rhode Island where his wife's from, and just was like, oh, we can buy a house here. Like it would be crazy to buy anything in New York. Like there's just no reason to. So I go visit him, and I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then I go to the pinball museum. I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of fun living in Rhode Island. But I mean, it's New York, baby. It's like the best city, And there's a new place on Long Island I want to check out that I think has like 100 machines or something. It's like just opened up a couple months ago.
Oh, good.
And there's some places in New Jersey where you can like go play a lot of stuff. So that's my next thing is like round up a little posse, borrow someone's car, go like spend 2 hours on a train, and go be like, all right, this place has like a ton of like 80s Gottlieb. I'm gonna check this out. It's my next move. So,
well, I will say there is a guy in New York that you should probably find out. His name is Charles.
What's up, Charles? Hit me up.
Yeah, definitely. He can take you on the tour. Yes. He's actually really good friends with Sunshine, and he knows about all that stuff. He even has a Big Lebowski. So if you've ever wanted to play one of those,
there's actually a couple of those. There's one in Sunshine, and there's one at Rulo's across the street from Buttermilk. So I play that a lot. I actually I love Lebowski. I think it's great. Well, okay, Charles, it's Martin at 99pi.org. Hit me up.
There you go.
Drop me a line.
Your inbox.
I probably shouldn't be giving my email on the internet, but it's only email me if you have a really good idea for a story that's not pinball. You can email me.
Or if you're a Nigerian prince who wants to smuggle money out of your country.
Listen, I live in New York, which is not expensive at all, and so I have tons of disposable income to just like send around. You know, it's not a problem.
All they need is your social security number just to verify it's you, so they can send you money.
It must be so cheap living in Utah. I'm jealous of you guys. It's so expensive here.
Actually, it used to be. In the last 10 years, it's gone crazy.
I gotta say, man,
a little bit.
Okay, it's not New York crazy though.
Oh my God, no, it's outrageous here, especially like in the last year or two. But Salt Lake City rocks. You know, I think it's a really underrated city. I think it's so cool, and
keep it that way. Keep it that way. We're good. The traffic's already bad. It's not East Coast bad because I used to live in DC, but it's getting there.
And you guys have that giant streets. I've heard this story might be like this. I work on a show about history. I love kind of collecting these old stories. But I heard a possibly apocryphal story that the streets were designed to be that wide so you could UE a horse-driven cart. Like that's why those streets are like 6-7 lanes wide, so that you could like do a U-turn on a horse-driven cart without having to go around the block. Even if it's apocryphal, that sounds fun, right? It's like
it sounds cool because this was Utah, at least from the Anglo-Saxon settlers of Utah. They were all Mormon pioneers.
Yeah.
So they came and it was set up by a grid system.
Yeah.
And so,
which it's actually like pretty easy to get around. Oh,
it's super easy. Yeah. When I moved to DC 15 years ago, more than 15. Wow. That was the first time I actually bought a Garmin because I don't know if anybody knows this, but all roads spontaneously end up at the Washington Monument. I have no idea why I always ended up there, but I was always so lost because it was so difficult to get around. Now you have GPS and it's not a big deal.
Oh my God.
That was like a revolutionary system back then because everything was so confusing.
My first couple of tours, 2009, 2010, no one had, iPhones had just come out, but like no one had them yet. And I was like printing out MapQuest directions.
MapQuest.
I still, maybe it was Google Maps at that point, but I definitely would print out driving directions from like, all right, we're going from like Atlanta to Raleigh. Like, all right, print out my directions, whatever. Like that was how I started out touring. So that gives you an idea of like, it was a different time. And, now it's
talking to your kids. They must think that like we came from the Stone Age. Or like, how did you ever get lost? And I'm like, Kate, let me just tell you how difficult it was on a car trip. You had to keep visual contact of the car in front of you because if you got lost, then you had to say, well, they could either be 10 miles behind us or 10 miles in front, but we have no idea how to hook up. I mean, seriously.
You got to pull over and
crazy,
wait. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not that long ago.
Well, I always love, I've been in New York for about 5 years now. I was, at first really like, oh, I got a map everywhere. But now it's like, I love when you get to the point with the subway. I'm like, Google Maps, I have a better idea here,
Yeah.
I think I got this. Don't worry about it.
I got you.
And so... I don't know. New York rules. I'm trying to make some pinball friends here. You guys have my email now. So if you want to be friends and go play some pinball, get in touch. And also, it's just like people are so friendly. Like I've made a lot of friends just from like,
New York is known for being friendly.
It's true. People don't believe me. But, well, also, I'm just a friendly person. I like going around chatting people up. But like, I can't tell you how many times, you're just flipping and you just like talk to someone and chit chat and make friends. And it's like, it's pretty cool. And so I've gotten some tips that way and like made some connections, and it's just like it's a nice hangout. I wish there were more older machines. That's my one critique. So if you own a bar in New York and you want to like get some pinheads together, like people can play Stern anywhere.
You need a co-op.
Oh, does that exist? Pinball co-ops?
Yeah.
So
Rochester.
Okay, so you were talking earlier about Delaware. So Rochester, our friend Bruce Nightingale from the Slam Tilt podcast, he's up there down in Delaware. So the Delaware Collective is Fox. So
Joe Fox. Yep.
Joe Fox. Yeah. So and they have him in Portland too. So there are people who don't have the space, but they're like, hey, we do a co-op, and so when people buy games, they put them in. It's a cool like communitarian view of like-minded pinheads who just want to play. So that's, hey, maybe that's something. I know it's completely different in New York, or even warehouse space is expensive.
I mean, you know, there's always places in like Ridgewood or Bushwick or wherever. Like, martin@99pi.org. If you want to get a warehouse together, if you've got a whodunit and want to convert it into a Columbo with me. The other one actually that I really, maybe you guys have podcasts. I want them to do a Dune. I love Dune, and I'm hoping
Dune would be interesting. Actually, Dune would be an interesting,
because it can be one of those ones where like some of the themed ones are very literal, and some of them, you know, are just like kind of drawing vibes. And so like you could just do like Ride the Sandworm or whatever. You don't have to like be super literal at Dune. It's just like there could be all kinds of cool ideas with it. And, you know, you could take one of these, you know, like what they did with the Beatles, where it's like, I don't know, we're just going to take a table and kind of refresh it. You could do one of these like water worlds or Stargates or Congos or something. You can just like give a fresh coat of paint and put some sandworms on there. And, you know, I'd be content with that. Starship Troopers, like, you know, there's some space ones already existing. You just have a good time. So Dune is like this weird like point of,
it's a super deep dive.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into it. I've watched the David Lynch one and the new one. I got the book and haven't read it, but it's this hilarious point of contention on our staff where like a couple people feel really strongly pro and a couple feel really strongly con, and it's like it's become a bit to debate it.
It's the pro Dune and the anti-Dune.
And when we have guests at the meetings, or if we have a new hire or something, the first question is like, what do you think about Dune? And then there's like groans. Everyone's like, no, don't start this. And then it's like, all right, be careful. And then, you know, the last person we asked was like, oh, I haven't seen it. And everyone's like, good. The only safe answer. Don't get a Dune take. But I love Dune.
The 1980s show, though, was so confusing that they actually printed out the movie.
Oh, the movie,
the movie was Sting. It was so confusing because if you didn't read the book, you had no idea what was going on. They finally printed out like these handouts to hand to people when they bought their tickets to explain the story.
I mean, it's not hilarious. As good, but I do kind of, I'm a big, like, I'm just like a big film guy. I love David Lynch, and you know, like I actually have just been, I'm almost done watching all of his. I've been on like this quest recently, so I was like, all right, I got to watch Dune. I was like, oh, this kind of rocks. And the CG is like pretty cool. Like I love like janky 80s CG. It's like a little low budge. And so it's like, you know, like these older games we're talking about, or like, you know, I was telling Scott earlier that, you know, in like April or May 2020, I like ordered some kits and I built with a Raspberry Pi, built a Super Nintendo and a Game Boy. And it's just like, I don't know, man, something about Super Nintendo level. Like that's exactly where I am. And, you know, there's limitations, but then within that you can do cool stuff. So I love when I'm watching an old Sam Raimi movie and you're just like, yeah, there's like janky blood spurting everywhere, but like it's like fun and silly, and I kind of prefer that to like more modern stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, I love it. But okay. So anyway, Dune and Columbo, those are my pitches. Or if anyone wants to make a 99pi pinball game, we got a lot of ideas.
There you go.
It's like we have this slogan, always read the plaque. You know, like a lot of times we'll tell a story and then the button will be like, and if you go there, there's a plaque that tells you the story. And so that's like one of our slogans. And it's like, that would be the, you know, that could be one of the modes or whatever. We do a lot of train stories. You could do the little Cactus Canyon train thing, you know, like so if anyone wants to do an 99pi pinball machine, it would be really cool. You know, I don't know how many it would sell.
You should hit up Matt and Rebby Hardy from WWE Wrestling.
What?
Yeah. They know a gentleman that has made their own Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Cool.
And then they also made a House of Hardy pinball machine because he won, like, I think they named it a Quest for Gold because he's won titles.
Oh, he's like a wrestler,
and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. My taste is too esoteric. I'm like pushing my Columbo agenda. Like,
that's okay. I'd take a Babylon 5. There's like tons of Star Trek ones. Let's do a Babylon 5.
You know what? I just watched Stargate. I was like,
Oh, Stargate would be good too, like a real good Stargate, not the shoot the pyramid.
Yeah, that game's like fun. But I watched the movie. I was like, this movie rocks. Like this movie's really. I was all in.
I like the movie. I think it's fun. It's the only time that James Spader actually didn't play the evil guy. It's like the one show.
I was like, and it's I think the guy who did like Independence Day, right? I'm like, oh, this is a cool blockbuster, even if you don't know all the lore or whatever. So. Yeah, or I watched Starship Troopers, which, you know, I like the Starship Troopers pinball, but I was like, oh, this movie's like pretty fun. I went on a Paul Verhoeven deep dive too. So I don't know. Yeah, it's so funny to look at some of the IP that like they were just taking swings and you're like, sure, Lethal Weapon 3, why not? You know, like
okay. Yeah. Well, the Johnny Mnemonic game, funny thing is, okay, did you hear the story on that? So they actually so it was George Gomez. Yeah, so George Gomez. Well, okay, so it actually wasn't that good of a movie. It bombed.
Yeah, it didn't do well, but I love it.
The designer, he went, and they gave him like a preview, and he watched the movie, and he got back, and he called Williams and was like, "Can we get out of this license?"
Oh my god, of course. No, I'm a sucker for mid-90s like internet site, like hackers and the net and stuff. So I watched Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah. Oh, the net was wasn't that the one where the internet was taking over and like exploding power lines when they were trying, or the Sandra Bullock?
Yeah, that's the one. And like right at the beginning, she goes to like pizza.com and orders a pizza. And I was like, it's real. Like, I love that. Or like, I just rewatched Hackers recently. Like, I love those like early 90s internet movies. And I think that's why I like Johnny Mnemonic also, because it's not so literal. They're like, here, get some megabytes or whatever. Like, I love that stuff. So I'd love to see some more esoteric things, but also, you know, they got big licenses. It's a bigger market now. They can't do like World Cup and just have that little cute little dog back there, you know.
Yeah.
But
doggy soccer.
I'm from Argentina, so it's like this was a huge World Cup year for me. So if they want to do a World Cup update with Messi, I would. I'd buy that for $1.
Are you excited that Messi's coming to the US?
Now you can go see him in Miami.
I really want to. I've like never seen him play in person, and also the World Cup next one. All the semifinals and finals are going to be here, and you know I have like my uncles and cousin went to Qatar and they saw the finals and like were there and cheering. I was like, oh man, he keeps saying he's going to retire, but he might come back. It's like that's the only sport I care about. Is every 4 years I'm like I want Argentina to win.
Well, you got one.
Yeah, it was rad.
Broke the old Maradona.
Yeah. Oh my god,
curse.
That was like like 3 months before I was born. I just missed it, so I was hyped up in my lifetime. So anyway, if you guys want to do a new World Cup, you know, I would that would get my seal of approval. Feature Messi prominently, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. One thing though, because you said Dune, Stern was trolling last week that they were at the licensing convention in Vegas, and Gary Stern did take pictures in front of the Dune picture. So
oh my god,
we'll see if they do.
Wait, what's
Dune.
The license?
The one I was more excited about that no one's pointed out. I was like, Scott, did you see he was in front of? Obviously, Green Day stuck out. I was like, yes, there was Green Day and Lizzo, but Muse in the bottom left of that picture.
Did you say Muse?
Like Muesli?
Muse.
Muse, the band Muse?
The band.
I don't really know them at all, but someone did them at karaoke.
You need to get into
What's the song? Black Holes something?
Yep.
Black Holes.
Someone did that at karaoke and just blew me away.
Really?
The guy was hitting all the parts. I was like, this band is crazy. I don't know. I don't really know them, but yeah, you know, like if they did what like the music that no one's ever gonna do a table of it'd be like the Ahmad Jamal like or Chico Hamilton like old jazz guys tables. Like no one's gonna buy that. Like no one's
Josh wants the Aquabats. Did they take a picture in front of Aquabats?
Wait, okay, real quick before I go, what's this licensing convention? This is crazy. So whoever owns the IP to all these things shows up and wheeling and dealing?
Yeah, so what it is every year they have a big licensing convention down in Vegas. Oh. They go down there and essentially all the IPs down there set up booths and they go around and they discuss what if their product mixing and mingling with pinball or whoever's down there makes sense, and they kind of talk some numbers. They may even lock in a license at that point. It's kind of a showcase. he took pictures in front of Barbie and Tupac.
Barbie machine would rock. Where's the Barbie machine? I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I think Barbie. I'm like Barbie and Oppenheimer together. I want to see both of them. I'm so excited. So yeah,
that would be an interesting mashup.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
together.
Like they can do two skins of the same machine. That would rule. No, I'm so hyped. So yeah, I hope they make a Barbie machine. That would absolutely rip.
I would almost guarantee that there's going to be a Muse. What would Muse?
Muse.
Whatever.
Okay, so I hope that didn't sound mean because we talked about Muse before, so that's why I laughed.
Muse.
But I think it's really up the aisle of what they're doing right now with Foo Fighters and stuff like that. I think, and I almost guarantee there's a Green Day. It would not shock me in the
Green
next
Day would be great
years.
if it were American Idiot.
I think American Idiot, anything before that, like if they did a Dookie and Nimrod and stuff.
Okay,
like
here's
that as well.
my pitch. If any Stern people are listening, ABBA would sell so much. Oh my god, I would die for ABBA.
Yeah, there's an Elton John coming out.
I love Elton John.
They haven't announced it, but it's
rumored.
It's rumored, open secret that Jersey Jack's.
I'm gonna shred some out. I love Elton.
That should be this
Yellow Brick Road. I can't hit those notes, or that would be my karaoke song. But yeah, I know so many people who go crazy for like the Mamma Mia movies, and like those songs are so catchy because like the Foo Fighters are cool, but I don't. I listened to it a lot when I was a teenager. I don't need to like hear every Foo Fighter song again every time I play. So a lot of the ones on location actually now have the volume turned down a bit because it's like otherwise the bartenders would like flip the machine over if they heard Everlong.
Would go crazy.
Yeah. Like there's one place where it's like almost completely off, and I'm like, I don't know, that's fine with me. Like I've heard plenty of
it's like in Wayne's World. Hey, no stairway to heaven.
No stairway.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So we've got some ideas, Stern. If you're listening, you can go back through if you want my consultation on like an ABBA machine or a Colombo machine, like maybe a little John Cassavetes mode. Like we corner the market on like film dorks. I can help you with the Criterion themed machines if you want. So hit me up. Yeah. You guys have my email several times at this point.
I was gonna say if you do want people to get a hold of you, what is that email again, Martin?
It's martin@99pi.org, but only if you want to be friends and play some cool pinball, or if you have a really good story idea. Don't send me a boring story idea. Send me a good one. But
and also plug your podcast.
I'm gonna go. I want to go to this licensing convention. I'm gonna see if they'll send me. That sounds fun. Yeah, 99% Visible. I mix it every week. It's a bunch of geniuses that I work with. I'm like, stoner musician guy surrounded by like the most insane, incredible journalists. So I'm always proud to support them, and I'm happy they let me come on 2 or 3 times a year and just do a dumb like music story or something. So I have some cool ones in the pipeline, but I mix the show every week, so that's my main thing. And then I go when I have something I'm super interested about, I'll tell a story about it. I'm on Twitter a lot. That's my only social media, which is it's Verispeeder, like an old tape Verispeed. So VARISPEEDER, Verispeeder. And you got my email. That's the only stuff I have. I don't have that much to plug. So yeah, hit me up if you're in New York and want to play some pinball and are a nice person.
Definitely. If you want to get a hold of us, we are loserkidpinballpodcast@gmail.com. Also, all of our socials, that includes YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, which honestly we don't post anything on TikTok, but Twitter, all at Loser Kid Pinball. Hit us up there. I actually even did like a link tree, so if you go to our Facebook or to our Instagram, you can just click that. It'll take you to the merch website, silverballswag.com/loserkid. That'll take you to our sweet, sweet shoes. You're going to want a pair for October when we come out, and everyone's wearing their shoes, and you're going to wish you're like, oh, well, I didn't get the memo. You're getting the memo right now. So, but yeah, what you got for us, Scott? Send us out.
You know what? I'm really looking forward to our 3.0 hats that are in development. So definitely look for those too. So anyway, leave us a review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Be nice to get a few. Yeah. Oh, we'll send you one. We want to get some more updated reviews. So
sounds good.
Thank you.
Talk to you in 2-ish weeks.
Thanks,
okay, bye.
Shut up and sit down.